Hello, my guest today on Faces of the Main Line is Rich Booker. He's the outgoing Ward 2 Commissioner in Radnor Township, and he's part of an article in the Philadelphia Inquirer, Farm Future is Challenged. I've asked Rich to be part of this discussion today. Hello, I'm John Ricciutti, and welcome to the show. Rich, thank you for coming on.
My pleasure.
I appreciate you reaching out to me to want to discuss this issue.
Well, actually, I mean, we exchanged and you asked, and I'm certainly glad to be on the show.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. Now, the Inquirer article is dated November 12th, and it was written about the Ardrossan estate, which is in Radnor Township, and it's in a very, very prominent area. I guess the first question I want to ask you is, and I watched some of the debates on the Radnor Channel, I guess the town hall meetings or town meetings that you guys have.
Yeah, that's a regular Board of Commissioners.
Board of Commissioners meeting, yeah. So, can you give the viewers a little background on how this estate became divided up, or can you give the viewer? I don't know how much people know about this whole thing.
Well, it's very famous. Ardrossan estate is the estate that was part of it was the model for the Philadelphia story with Audrey Hepburn. No, not Audrey Hepburn. It's the other Hepburn.
Right.
Catherine Hepburn. And it's a very famous, it was a farm. It was the Scotts from the Janie Montgomery Scott, the Scott family. It's hundreds of acres, and it had been the home of a very famous mansion for decades, 80 years or 90 years. It's still there. And in recent times, the family, the patriarchs have passed away, and the family trust wanted to sell the land, and so that they can make a distribution of the estate. And so that's what they've been working on for a couple of decades. In this case, the last portion of the property was put on the blocks for subdivision and sale starting about 2013, 2014. And in 2014, they did the last portion of a couple hundred acres of the land. They came into the Board of Commissioners and asked for what's called a density modification. It's agricultural zone land, and so it would have only been allowed to have one house per 5 acres, I think, or maybe it was one house per 2 acres. So they came in and they said, well, we have a different setup. We don't want to do that. We want to have a village area and larger areas and smaller areas. So they did. It was a very involved subdivision. They came before the Board of Commissioners, and eventually it was approved. I voted against it. And as part of that redevelopment in 2014, or the subdivision, there's a couple hundred acres, the last couple hundred acres, the township purchased 71 acres. So it wasn't part of the subdivision. However, concurrently with the subdivision, Eddie Scott and the Scott Trust decided to sell to Radnor Township 71 acres out of I guess it was about 300 acres total. They sold Radnor Township 71 acres for about $12 million. The taxpayers paid the estate of the Scott estate and the Scott family $12 million of taxpayer money for 71 acres that was right along the edge of the property. And then the rest of the property parcels were subdivided. And that occurred in 2015, and they've been doing development and selling parcels ever since then.
So is the cattle contained to just an area where it can't get beyond it? It can't wander all over the property, I guess, all the properties. The cattle that's on there.
Yeah, so the cattle are only on the 71 acres that Radnor bought. The cattle are not on any of the subdivided properties, and before this portion of properties were subdivided in 2014 and 2015, there was also a prior subdivision in I think it was 2007, something like that. So there was a bunch of larger properties that were carved off first in 2007, I think it was. So there's been several iterations of these subdivisions. But the cattle are on the township property. So remember the $12 million that the township bought this open space. The township bought this as open space for use by the public. It was supposed to have trails. It was supposed to give public access to this iconic estate in Radnor. Instead of there being any public use of this land, it has been turned over to the farmer who has the cattle on it. The farmer pays $1 a year. So for a $12 million property that the Radnor Township pays over $600,000 a year in debt service and principal and interest, Radnor Township gets in return $1. So the cattle use the township property. That's where they are.
And that's what you find objectionable.
I don't necessarily find it objectionable. I think that the township property should be used by the public. It's for open space for the public. There should be trails on it. It's an asset that the public bought for $12 million. And the public should be using that open space, at least have it available. It shouldn't be turned over to a private commercial operation. That's what I believe. But I don't object to having cattle on the property. Where this ties in is some of the older properties, not the ones we're talking about from 2014 and 15. It was the original earlier subdivision. Some of these larger properties are 10 acres or more. They get a tax break on their property taxes because there's farming operations going on. The fact that the township gives a taxpayer-funded subsidized lease to this farmer at $1 a year, right? Where can a farmer get 71 acres for $1 a year? Nowhere. It's the taxpayers that give that break. Because that farmer has that tax subsidy, that makes it a viable operation, and that farmer is doing hay and corn on these other properties.
And soy.
And so there's about 24 parcels that these people get huge amounts of property tax reductions, 10, 20, 30, 28, up to almost $30,000 a year reductions. I calculated it's in there. $291,000 a year is the total tax loss. I believe, so when you say what's objectionable, the cattle is not on there is not objectionable. What I say is that the townships allowing the cattle to be there is a linchpin that makes the farming operation viable. And because it's a viable farming operation, these folks are able to get this very nice property tax reduction. What I say is we should turn over the open space to the public that bought it for $12 million. And if the people want to continue to get their property tax reductions, these are uber rich people with huge estates, they can get they need to contract directly with the farmer and have the cattle and farming go on their own properties, and they can continue to avail themselves of that tax break. But the township should be out of it. And I feel it's wrong for the township to give this particular subsidized lease with a $12 million taxpayer-funded asset. So that's what I don't think that that's a good use of money. And it's not me being a socialist or, being a lefty. I'm trying to, I want to slow the spread of socialism.
I can see that.
This is about matter of transparency. This is good governance, and this is in the best interest of the taxpayers who paid $12 million for this asset and right now have no use whatsoever of that open space. No use. So that's what, and on top of that, people are leveraging that to get tax breaks, further depriving all the rest of us of those tax dollars and making all of us pay a little bit more because of that.
Oh, yeah. Maybe they're afraid of like a bull running at them while they're walking through the open space.
Well, that could happen. One of the people made the point that these are not dairy, these are cattle. These are not dairy cows. And you can't have people in the same space as herds of cattle.
No, I don't think so.
Right? So it's one or the other.
Unless you're a matador.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Unless you're we can't really have both the use of the public and the use by this farmer. But again, I have no objection. But the people who are getting a tax benefit, they need to be the ones who are doing the farming. So they need to either farm their own properties or hire the farmer to farm on their properties, including putting the cattle on their properties.
Who oversees the Act 319 to determine the owners produce $2,000 a year?
Right. So
in farm goods.
So this is what I was talking about with the farmland assessment. If you have a farm in Pennsylvania and you want to develop it, Pennsylvania has been losing a lot of farms because of that. And since 1970, in the 70s, they were losing a lot of farms and it was getting developed. They wanted to have and encourage people to keep their farms. So Pennsylvania enacted Act 319. There's also Act 515, which we don't really use here. But it is an incentive. If you continue to farm on that property, even if you build houses on it, you can get a lower tax. You can get a lower tax payment for property taxes. Act 319 is a state statute that provides for this benefit. It says that you must have an active farming operation that produces $2,000 a year in income. So it's a legitimate money-making. $2,000 is very low. But they don't want it to, it's not just for like gentlemen farmers that are that it's supposed to generate $2,000. Act 319 is a state statute that is implemented and enforced by the county. The county receives in our case, Delaware County receives the application, and it's on, I believe it's yearly. You have to recertify every year. You have to say, I have over 10 acres of land. I have active farming that produces 2,000 or more, and that farming is continuing. And then you send that to the county, and the county approves it. Once the county approves it, they lower the property tax by changing the value of the land. So every property, like your house, everybody's house, when we got the reassessment, they do a land value and then they do the value of the house. If you're under Act 319, they did the land value and the value of the house, and then they take the land value and they lower it because if you're in the program, you are actively farming. They value the land at the value of farmland, and that's what lowers their taxes, their property taxes, and it's worth a huge amount of money. A lot of these estates pay $100,000, $110,000, $120,000 a year in property taxes, and they can get $20,000 or $25,000 reduction in property taxes by being in this program, and that's more than most people's house. Most people don't pay $20,000, for property taxes. And these folks are getting a reduction more than what most people pay. So I say, God bless them. Let them do that. 319, I have no problem with 319. But the people who are availing themselves of that tax benefit need to be the ones who are actively farming directly. They need to either be farming it directly with that $2,000 in operation, or they need to hire the farmer to do so and do it on their property, not leverage a community taxpayer-funded asset of 71 acres in open space. Does that make sense, or is that too much? Is that too much for the audience, you think?
No, I think that they'll rewind it. Okay. And then they'll watch it again. Right. And then they'll rewind it and watch it again. Because,
as you said, I'm a tax attorney, and I have my JD and my LLM in taxation. I practice in the area of tax law for 20 years now, and so I'm well versed in the issues here, but it is complex for people to really understand.
No, it's complex for me.
The bottom line is, but for Radnor having those cattle probably this whole operation wouldn't go, and the benefit would go away.
Yeah. Well, I noticed it on the front page of the Inquirer, and it's what attracted me to it. Now, there was a follow-up article to this.
Yes, there was.
And do you have time to discuss it?
Sure, of course. The follow-up article, Radnor officials defeat measure to cancel ranch lease seen as aiding Ardrossan tax reductions. Not a sexy headline. What I moved to do was to terminate the lease with the farmer, the $1 a year lease. And I brought that before the Board of Commissioners on November 22nd. We had our regular board meeting. So if you want to look at YouTube, November 22nd, Radnor Township Board of Commissioners.
I watched it live.
And you watched it live, great. And my motion was to terminate this lease. And the rationale is if we terminate the lease, it would force those people who are availing themselves of the tax benefits to actually hire the farmer themselves, and it would make the open space available again for use by the public. And I've been consistent with this because it was in 2015, in March of 2015, we implemented this lease with the farmer. And in March of 2015, I voted against it as well then. So I voted against it then, and I brought a motion on November 22nd to terminate it. And the motion went before the board, and I gave an eloquent statement and a very cogent and rational argument for my position. And it was defeated by the Democrat majority with irrational. It was irrational reasoning. It was irrational response. The Democrat majority in Radnor basically voted to keep subsidizing these uber rich folks so that they're allowed to continue with their property tax reduction and to keep the people from using their $12 million open space asset. So the Democrats did that. It was the 4 Democrats voted against the 2 Republicans.
Well, that brings me to who maintains the property?
Well,
Radnor Township?
Radnor Township doesn't maintain the property now.
They do not?
No, because it's leased to a farmer for $1.
Okay.
So the farmer does that.
Okay.
All right, but the land itself it's open space. There's no public facilities. There's no trails. There's no parking. There's no fields. There's no grass to cut. What it consists of is undeveloped area. There's 3 tracts: the quarry tract, the Wheeler tract, and the rye field. There's a field of rye. It's like high. Looks like wheat field, and that's at the corner of Darby Paoli Road and Newtown Road. And there's very little. There's very little to maintain in a rye field. You might have to cut it once in a while. The other two tracts are stream area and wild area. So there's really very little cost to maintaining it. You might have to cut the rye field, once or twice a year, which the township cuts. The township has 700 acres today. Already has 700 acres of open space. So the township maintains plenty of open space.
Sure.
And we would just add this in if we had it. There would be some marginal costs, but the township paid for a $12 million piece of open space. That was the decision that they made in 2013 and 14. They bought it. I voted against it. I lost that vote. The township owns it, and the township has an obligation to maintain it if we're going to own it, right? So my compatriots on the Board of Commissioners say, well, it would cost us it might cost us a few $1,000s a year to maintain it if we got rid of the farmer. We pay $600 and some thousand a year in debt service on it. It's our property. It's the people's property. That's no reason to keep a $1 a year lease. It would cost us $2,000 to maintain it. So let's keep the public off of it and make them not be able to use it and lease it out to this person for $1 while we make everybody pay $600,000 a year. That's nonsensical.
Yeah, but you have to agree that there's an element of liability to having that as an open space if you're not going to be able to contain the animals and people can't comfortably walk on them. Because you as an attorney know.
No, there's no liability. No, absolutely no liability. What we would do is we would take the cattle off of the land. The cattle wouldn't be there. We would then build trails, parking.
Where would the cattle go?
The cattle would, presumably they would go onto the other private properties on Ardrossan who are getting the tax benefit. If that's what they agreed to do, I don't know where they would go. The cattle may not stay in Radnor at all if we terminate that lease. My guess is that they would not. In that article, you see the farmer says, actually the wife, the spokesperson, said, well, without the 71 acres, we won't have a cattle operation. So the cattle would go. But again, the township didn't buy $12 million parcel so we could have cattle on it. We bought a $12 million parcel for the public to use, not for cattle to use. So, and there's no liability. It's open space.
It's liability if there's a cow walking around and some kid gets bitten by it.
You'd take the cow.
Stepped on.
Cows would have to come out.
Okay, that's it.
Right. Yeah, we couldn't. In other words, we couldn't do those at the same time. We couldn't have the public use that open space and keep the cattle on that property.
Okay, well, I think that's what you were. If you don't mind me saying, your colleague commissioners found objectionable.
What did they find?
I think that they wanted to see the cattle. I think that it's all. They think it's very attractive to see that the animals when you drive by, you see the cattle out there, and I think people find that very attractive.
It's beautiful for the people in that neighborhood. Sure.
Well,
if you live over there, it's of course it's beautiful, and I don't say it's not, but what I say is that is not the best use of taxpayer money.
Well,
and also people in my neighborhood, I never drive, and it's like, oh, it's great when you drive by, you can see the cattle on the township property.
That's what I'm speaking of.
Yeah, but I don't drive by over there, and I don't want to make a trip over there to see the cows. And nobody else in the township gets any benefit from that land except for to drive by. Now, other people might want to go and have picnics. Other people might want to hike. They might want to have biking. And that's what the land is for because they paid $12 million for it. That's what it's for. It's not, I know it's beautiful. It's nice to have the cattle, but we can't have the government buying $12 million properties and leasing it for $1 so the people in the neighborhood have nice looking cows.
Well, I don't know who made that deal, and maybe
that was Bill Spengler and Elaine Paul Shaver who made that deal.
Okay.
That was in 2013-14. They made that deal.
Okay.
$12 million to get it. So would you, if you bought a $12 million shore house, would you rent it out for $1 a year? I don't think so.
No, unless I were a billionaire.
I'm not a billionaire. I don't think so.
No, I wouldn't. Even if I were a billionaire.
No. You would try to get something. You would try to make it cash flow positive.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, I guess you can't fix what they've done, and I guess that's what you have to live with. And maybe your fellow.
Well, no, but we can fix what they've done. That's what the motion was. The motion was to fix.
No, you can't if they're not going to vote for it. I should have finished my sentence.
Okay. Well, I gave them the chance to vote for it. I think they're irrational not voting for it.
Well,
I think they're continuing a subsidy for uber rich, and this should be it's not really a Republican issue. It's just really if you believe that taxpayer dollars should be used to benefit the taxpayers and it should not be used to subsidize the very wealthy, then which is generally Democrats promote that, not Republicans like me. But I would have thought that they would have joined in on this, but they didn't. There's some underlying beneficiaries to this that I think influenced the decision. Yeah, but you're right. I could fix it. Tried to fix it. That's why I that's why I brought this issue before the board, and it got voted down. But I don't plan on ending it here. I think we'll continue to pursue and to make the case.
But okay. It looks like you're telling me something with that look on your face.
What? No, I'm not. I'm telling you what I plan to continue to.
Yeah, but you're an outgoing commissioner.
I am an outgoing commissioner. Yeah.
Why did you choose not to run?
Well, John,
That's personal. I know.
No, it's not. It's not. I mean, I've been in this for this is my 8th year as commissioner, and I was 4 years as a school board director. It's time for me to go and do some other things.
You have a job. To have a job.
I have a job as an investor, as a father, and as a husband, and so there's a lot of things for me to do and to work on that I'm looking forward to. But I think 8 years is plenty for board of commissioner.
I will tell you this in defense of everyone. I know you kind of can be adversarial with your.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think I'm the nice guy. I think I'm the nicest guy on that board personally. Nicest man, nicest woman. Yeah, I'm the nicest. I'm not either, but I think I'm the nicest one.
I've interviewed most on that, and you are very good, but you're a challenge.
I am a challenge. Oh boy, I don't see it.
You are a challenge.
I don't see it.
No, I didn't think so.
I don't see it. I could be wrong, but I don't see it.
No,
I don't know.
I can tell you that. But I do really think, for the most part, Radnor Township is run very well. I think you have a valid argument here.
Thank you.
And I understand it. It took me. I read this several times. Now I'll go back and watch this interview and rewind it and several more times. But you understand it from a different perspective. I think there are a lot of. I mean, how much community outrage is there about this? I don't know. Do you have a number, a percentage, a wild thought?
Well, no one. Again, 2015, when we set this up, it was 4-2. Democrats voted for this. The Republicans voted against it. And at that time, it was, well, we're subsidizing so the farm can stay, and that's nice to do. Now we know the true cost of it. Now we've been doing it for 7 years.
Okay.
And now, after this, there was a prior article in July that basically said, that this is occurring. I looked into it. I agree with what that article said. And I think that it's time that we take the taxpayer-funded asset and let the taxpayers use it. And I think that that's a higher calling. So people say, well, Rich, it's a farm. You're saving the farm. Well, we're saving the farm with a $12 million piece of land. I mean, sure, if you give $12 million piece of land to a farmer, he can run an operation.
Yeah,
but that's not the best use of taxpayer money. And if you wanted to do that, that's what you needed to make clear. That's what you needed to make clear to the voters, that's what you were doing. And that's what I'm doing right now, making it clear so people understand, because I don't think they understood. And certainly, nobody's using the land right now, and I think that that's improper.
Well,
if we want to sell it, if we want to sell the land to the farmer, then let's sell it and get the $12 million back for the taxpayers, and then he can farm all he wants.
He can put goats on there.
He could put goats. You told me about places where they lease out the goats.
Yeah, Upper Merion has a farm.
This is a cattle operation. I don't know if you could lease those for people, but I understand people like the farm, but we can't have a farm at any taxpayer expense. That's not right. However, but we live in not a democracy. We live in a republic. It's a system of representative. You vote for your representative. The representative votes on these issues. And right now, I'm in the minority on this issue. So I'm losing it right now.
Well, my marketing knowledge tells me we've really extended the viewer attention. So we're coming up to 30 minutes. You got the last word.
The last word is, I have always been a strong advocate for lower taxes, smaller government, greater individual liberty and personal responsibility, transparency in government, and I've always acted in the best interest of the taxpayers. I will continue to do that. That's what I've done here. That's what I've done as a school board director, as a commissioner, and in the future. So while this issue, for right now, I lost on the 22nd, we will continue to fight the good fight and to do the right thing for the taxpayers, for the people of Radnor, for the people of the Commonwealth, for my family, and continue with my faith and in my role as father, husband, and citizen.
Thank you. With Rich slowing the spread of socialism, this is John Ricciutti. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed the show.
Thank you. Thank you, John.